Dear friends and followers, welcome back to my channel. Greetings from the sleeper berth, and I hope y'all are doing amazing out there. If you're not a subscriber to my channel, which I know a lot of you aren't, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can get more videos like this and also participate in Truckin It live. Since I haven't seen too many people on there as of yet. So, the CDC is now asking team drivers to wear masks in their sleeper berth and in their cab. And I really think that's a bad idea because they haven't even covered the safety aspect of it yet. I get it. They want people to wear masks everywhere, but they have an agenda. And I've actually looked into this, and I've also discussed it with my doctor through a video visit yesterday. And he actually discourages that, but encourages wearing of them in, let's say, the truck stops. I'll talk with you about why coming up, because it's got a lot more to do with something that I already have versus the whole C-19 situation. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, should you wear a face mask in the sleeper berth? If you're in a team environment, you may be asking this question because some of these employers are saying yes, some are saying no, and there is really murky guidance on this stuff. The CDC is saying yes, and we're siding with CR England and some of the others that you should wear a mask whenever you're in the truck. I tend to disagree with them because they've never tried to drive a truck with a mask on. Simply put, that mask gets over your eyes, it blocks your visibility, and I think there's a much better solution out there. Because if you can't see the road ahead, your chances of dying in a crash are much higher than that of dying from China virus. That's what I'm going to call it, China virus in this episode. I actually do have an important reason why I wear a mask in public. And that is because of my seasonal allergies, which are very severe to willow, mold spores, timothy grass, and several others. And I've talked with my doctor and allergists about it. So, and they're saying also for me to keep taking medication as much as necessary. And they're also telling me to be very careful in the truck stops in particular, where it's actually more important for you to wear a mask if you have any conditions that require it. Now let me turn the camera around and show you what I would recommend instead of wearing masks in the sleeper. So if you can see it, that is what we call a sleeper curtain. So that sleeper curtain that separates the business end from the leisure end of the truck. If you are a team driver, you better know all too well what that is. And if your company doesn't provide you one, you need to tell them to go truck themselves and find another employer. Because if you're running team, a sleeper curtain is definitely a must-have. And if there's long detention times and stuff, you might want to consider a windshield curtain as well. So, that being said, why is the CDC being so dumb? Well, the answer is because they got bad advice from somebody who has no knowledge of how team driving works. It's that simple. If your co-driver gets sick, you're going to get sick. And it's because even with good ventilation systems, you're still in a confined box that's only 8x8, or maybe a bit longer depending on what operation you're in, and what kind of truck you have, and what kind of sleeper you have. And many people don't know this aspect, but in the case of a lot of the team drivers, myself included, we go with somebody who we know really, really well. That is somebody who has been driving for a while and understands. Now, I'm not talking about operations like CRST and CR England, where they're actually training companies and they're throwing you in with some student you don't know. But in a proper team driving environment, you're probably in a husband-wife situation, or you're in a situation where you've come to know the person for over a decade, or for over a couple of years, or depending on your operation, maybe they just paired you with somebody new, but you're getting to know them and you're going to know them for some time. In any case like that, quite frankly, I don't think a mask is necessary. I think a mask is necessary for 3 different situations. Number 1, if your shipper or receiver requires it in the office. That's easy enough. Number 2 is that if you suffer from an underlying condition, and I know that obesity is a common condition, but we don't want to talk about that as much. Let's talk about the other ones. Allergies, diabetes, lung conditions, heart disease, and the related conditions to heart disease, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. If you got those conditions, then you need to be doing a lot more than just wearing a mask. Those are conditions, if you know you have them, where you're going to need to talk with your doctor about things like a diet and exercise program, medications, and treatments for your condition. And if you don't have those conditions that you know of, you're still at risk. Because, I mean, even healthy adults are getting this and they're running around asymptomatic. So, what's going to protect you is social distance. Pure and simple. I did mention the sleeper curtain earlier in this episode, but I also want to mention the fact that you need to maintain, when you're in the truck stop, there are clear markings on the floor, there are signs everywhere now, 6 foot minimum, and preferably 12. And if you can't get the concept of 6 and 12 feet, you have no business going inside the truck stop, and should instead consider delivery or curbside service. Another thing is, let's discuss the symptoms of China virus. They are loss of taste and smell. That's usually your first symptom, but not always. A dry cough that is not caused by allergies. Now, if you have allergies, you're probably going to have a wet cough anyway, because of your itchy, watery eyes and your runny nose and your sinus issues. And then it'll progress with a fever and difficulty breathing. Once you get to the fever, you need to either be at home or you need to be going to the emergency room. It really is that simple. Do not go inside the truck stop if you have a fever. Instead, get on the phone with your doctor, because there's additional steps you're probably going to need to follow. And if you need to call emergency services, well, they need to be ready too. So, now, what about those underlying conditions I mentioned earlier? Those are also conditions that require a phone call to your doctor. If you start feeling excessive thirst and hunger, if you start feeling chest pain, or if you start feeling anything else, get on the phone. Do not hesitate to call. Because there are plenty of conditions in which you need to call your doctor, because he is the best, or she, depending on if it's a girl or a guy, is the best informed person who you can get in contact with about this kind of stuff. And I want you to also be aware that many of these truck stops, by what I've seen, have also been closing overnight. So you may want to get some additional facilities in your truck too. And by facilities, I mean bottles of water, empty jugs, perhaps a bucket, because now we're starting to get into the situation where the restrooms might actually be closed. And in a team environment, you don't always have time to stop at every little Pilot or Flying J or other truck stops and actually go to the bathroom in there. And with the rest areas being crowded or closed themselves, again, you need to be aware of that so that we can make sure that you're not spreading illness to someone else. Oh yeah, and if you got to use a Portajohn, there's another thing that you need on board your truck at all times, and that's whether or not the store is sold out of it. If you got to use a Portajohn at the rest area, this is the stuff to carry with you. You see the name on it, Lysol. Because that toilet seat and all the other stuff in that Portajohn are not that well taken care of. And therefore, if you don't disinfect that Portajohn when you go into it, you might actually be carrying China virus without even knowing it. So, there. I hope this helps you in trying to navigate this whole new world that I'm going to call it. There is definitely no normalcy anymore, even in the states that are trying to recover. And I wish y'all nothing but the best. And if you're caught in that 3-person team environment, as opposed to my particular team environment, which is only me, myself, and one other person, you need to be especially cautious, because you've got 2 people sharing your space instead of just one. And whoever that company is that's doing 3-person teams, they really need to discontinue that offering, because they didn't think about the fact that a pandemic would happen when they were doing their game plan. It may save them money on equipment in the short term, but in the long term, it is very detrimental to a driver's health. And if anyone else is considering following CR England and their 3-person team experiment, well, they better consider the consequences of a situation like this before they even think about it. Because there's not enough sleeper curtain technology, and there's not enough of safety equipment in the bunk to handle that 3rd person, even if you have a bunk that's specially designed to do it. You can put all the bunk restraints in the world on that truck, but if there's any sort of incident, that driver in that 3rd bunk that is not on this truck is dead. And it does not matter if it's China virus or if it's a bridge strike, that third person is at greater risk than if it's just yourself and one other person you know really well. I'm Zach Bell. This is Truckin It. Let's make your best trip your next trip. Keep learning, keep thinking, keep driving safely. Bye for now.